Once the Rapid Transit System Link, or RTS Link, opens in 2027, Singapore is expected to see a net outflow of around 290 million Sing dollars in consumer spending annually. The projections come from a new study by the Singapore Business Federation, Restaurant Association of Singapore, and Singapore Retailers Association. Now, Singaporeans are expected to spend more than 1 billion Sing dollars extra in Johor Bahru each year. At the same time, visitors from Johor Bahru are projected to spend an additional $756 million here in Singapore. In the report's worst-case scenario, the annual net loss on Singapore could swell to $2.5 billion. And the effects won't be confined to the north. Almost every region in Singapore is expected to see some impact, with the west region seen to be hit the hardest. The exception is the central region, which attracts the lion's share of visitor spending due to higher-end retail, entertainment, hotel and dining offerings. And when it comes to what Singaporeans are likely to spend on across the causeway, groceries top the list, followed by pharmacy purchases and beauty services. That's mostly as these are particularly price-sensitive segments, where lower cross-border prices have already influenced consumer spending patterns. And the RTS Link is also expected to make cross-border travel a whole lot busier. Outbound trips by Singapore consumers could jump 51%. That's 11.2 million additional trips every year. Travel in the opposite direction is also expected to rise, with 3.3 million more round trips annually. Altogether, that adds up to roughly 40,000 extra cross-border journeys every single day. Now, in response to all this, businesses in Singapore say they have four major concerns. First, spending in Johor Bahru is already climbing, and the RTS Link could accelerate that shift. Second, competing on price alone simply isn't sustainable. Rising operating costs are also making it tougher. And finally, many say small and medium-sized firms will need more support to keep up with the changing landscape. Now, to help businesses get ahead of those changes, the three industry groups have put forward 10 recommendations across three broad areas. They include encouraging consumers to spend more locally, attracting higher value tourist spending, and helping businesses adapt through cost relief and support for new business models. Now, retailers are turning to exclusive Singapore products and experiential retail to differentiate themselves from competitors across the causeway in Johor Bahru. Companies also say a possible expansion of the Community Development Council voucher scheme could provide a further lift to consumer spending. Nadirah Zaidi has more.
Singapore may not be able to compete with Johor Bahru on price, but this toy retailer is staying competitive through strategic collaborations and protecting its intellectual property. The firm says innovative designs help to attract both tourists and local shoppers.
We signed contract with Disney, and Disney contract allow us to do collab with designer. That is the unique selling point, which is you cannot get any other places out of Singapore. So this is something we have crafted our own Mickey Jiangshi and only happen in Singapore.
Such limited edition products have boosted the firm's annual revenue by 30%. Mr. Tan adds that another way to create differentiated products could include working with event organizers to launch specific themed merchandise. The Singapore Business Federation, Restaurant Association of Singapore and Singapore Retailers Association are also recommending to extend the CDC voucher scheme to support businesses most exposed to outbound spend. While details are not finalized, there are some ideas.
We are thinking of getting a pool of retailers to come in where consumer can put in $100 into this platform, but the value become $120. And these retailers are able the consumers are able to go to this retail shop and spend the $100 as if it's $120, packaged like this.
For this wellness spa, loyal customers remain its core business, but it is also hoping the consumption vouchers will help it bring new clients. The company does not currently accept CDC vouchers as its outlets in shopping malls are not eligible.
As a service provider, we can also have a similar platform for more Singaporeans to try out our services and use it for self-care and experience. Because most of the CDC vouchers currently, I feel people would think that it's for food and groceries, but people would not think that it's for self-care services.
Responding to the study, Minister of State for Trade and Industry Alvin Tan says the government will continue helping local firms stay competitive. A task force announced last year has been engaging residents and firms on these strategies. The findings and recommendations are expected to be ready later this year.
Singapore's food and beverage operators are pressing for more flexible manpower rules to stay competitive. These include wage support to reviewing the foreign labour quota for international players and easing rules so firms can experiment with new concepts. Ivy Chok reports.
This Cantonese restaurant in Geylang relies on a mix of local and foreign staff to keep its kitchen running. But finding and keeping workers has become one of its biggest headaches, partly due to hiring competition from bigger international brands. The restaurant founder says one fix is putting a cap on how many foreign workers these brands can employ.
There's a large influx of foreign brands coming from China or even from the region. So these are all big brands and they're really throwing really big monies to attract even foreign talent. So it makes us local retailer very, very hard to compete on the fair grounds.
Besides cutting costs, the firm is also looking to extend opening hours to capture the supper crowd. It's part of how F&B players are rethinking business operations, with some even switching up menu items altogether to distinguish between offerings in Singapore versus Johor. For chain operator The Soup Spoon, this means keeping up with changing consumer tastes.
Innovating on our menus to make sure that we fit into the lifestyles of people, which are, always on the health trend, looking at things that are more protein-centric and everything. So that's something that is always in our pipeline in terms of the menus that we do, the price points that we do.
The Restaurant Association of Singapore says as businesses continue to innovate, the hope is to build unique offerings across different corners of Singapore.
You look at inbound tourists who come in and not just say, oh, let's go to Orchard Road. So if I think about, for example, Sengkang, what's there that can be very different? What offering, what brand could be there? What cafe could be there that has a very different vibe versus your Jalan Besar, versus your Kallang, or versus your West Jurong? That can really help drive more vibrancy in Singapore and then less uniformity, which is what a lot of people always complain about.
For now, industry groups say the priority is clear. Give businesses room to adapt manpower rules and experiment before the RTS Link reshapes the competition for good.
Woodlands may sit at the doorstep of the RTS Link, but businesses there may not be the hardest hit. The area already sees high cross-border spending. Once the RTS opens, residents living further away will find Johor Bahru more accessible. This may put retailers outside the north under more pressure. These include areas like Sembawang, Yishun, Canberra, Marsiling and beyond. Retailers in these areas stand to lose more local spending. Now, businesses around Woodlands could also gain from higher visitor traffic. The study proposes turning the area into a northern gateway, where RTS passengers spend at surrounding shops instead of just passing through. For example, when visitors from Johor who likely are heading straight to Orchard Road, Marina Bay and other established tourist destinations. This also means the central region may be more insulated. An analyst believes the RTS will create both winners and losers. As spending patterns change, businesses that adapt quickly stand to benefit the most.
This is inevitable when you have two neighbors very close to each other and the other one can offer product services that are at a much affordable price compared to the other one. So then you can look at how these businesses has reinvented themselves. And some of them even have moved the businesses over to the other side, right, to capitalize on that.
Here's how the cross-border rail project has progressed over the years. Construction at Woodlands North resumed in January 2021 after COVID-19 delays. 3 years later, construction was 65% complete. Singapore and Malaysia marked the completion of the span that connects the marine viaducts. By December last year, RTS Link completed its first test run within 6 months of unveiling its first train. And earlier this year, structural works on the stations and the cross-border viaduct were largely completed as testing intensified. E-gates were installed in April. Train testing is due to begin in September, and passenger services are expected to start in January 2027.